एकम् अक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता वा चलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो देहं मृण्मयम् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भाव कोऽहं भावयुत कुतो वरधिय दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we begin our meditations on Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram, the work by Adi Shankara again. And as with Atma Bodham, we will be relying on Bhagavan's translation. There is one primary reason which comes, that Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram is a work so loved by the Vartikakaras, the commentators, and the speakers, that the commentaries on Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram itself runs to many volumes. Just one work, one Vartika, one commentary by his immediate Sishya, Acharya's immediate Sishya Sureshwaracharya, called Manasollasa. the commentary on Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram is called as Manasollasa. I had come across a commentary on that commentary in Ramanashram staying days in the library. It used to be 600 pages, two volumes of 600 pages or 500 pages each of that bound volumes were there in the ashram. And I quickly came back to Atma Ucharam and would be in touch with Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram whenever Bhagavan allows. One such engagement with Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram was when Venkatesh ji and Suman ji, the president of BSMRC, the research wing of Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, and his better half, Suman ji, about 10-12 years back, they had somehow found it that they could come to me for the elucidation of Dakshinamurthy Stotram. So every Wednesday or so, without any gap, they would promptly come at around 11 o'clock or so, and they will sit down in our meditation hall, and the three of us would go through the Sanskrit version of Sanskrit original of Dakshinamurthy Stotram. We used to do Parayanam of Dakshinamurthy Stotram first, then take up each of the verses and go through at leisure. Maybe that ran for a year or so. I'm not sure. But they were both meticulous in their approach to learning Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram. That's what I recall from that time. But because of our going through the Sanskrit version, one change from the Atma Bodha meditations we had can be that we can simultaneously bring the Sanskrit shlokas also. And this process is made easy because there are mainly 10 verses on which we have to meditate. Atma Bodha was very long. And anyway, my Sanskrit was not good enough for us to go along with the Sanskrit meanings also simultaneously. But here, since the meditations have already happened, we can probably simultaneously look at the Sanskrit verses also, and Bhagavan's translation, as you will find, are divine. As Muruganar says, only a divine being could have written these works. He says once he comes across Aksharamanamala and the Who Am I book, he finds that only a divine being, only Shiva himself coming as Guru could have written these works. Before we go into the greatness of Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram, we can see the account of the background in which Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram came to be written and the happenings between the Dakshinamurthy Avataram and the Manasa Putras of Brahma as recounted by Bhagavan. Bhagavan has recounted this in a brief form in the Avatarikai to the work Atma Bodham. In that Avatarikai means a brief introduction to a verse or a brief introduction to a work. In that, Bhagavan has briefly mentioned the Dakshinamurthy Avataram, the background in which this whole instruction takes place. But then there is a detailed account which Bhagavan gives on 7th February 1947 to Suri Nagamma. And this is present in the letters from Sri Ramanashram. You can all go through that letter number 89 for the details. I'll be relying on that for the legend, for the incidents behind and the meditations on the backdrop in which the events take place and how Acharya comes to write a verse, a stuti in the Ramakrishna Mission commentary on Manasolasa. It is said that a stuti usually doesn't contain abstruse Vedanta, especially Advaita. Stuti usually contains some events, praise of the one deity or guru, but then very rarely does it go into the nuances or complexities of Vedanta. But this is one stuti which has combined the most abstruse of philosophies, Advaita philosophy, along with stuti to Sri Dakshinamurthy. And in the preface, you find how in the Ramakrishna Ashram, how nicely they have taken it is that, is this not a kind of brainwashing that you say that Ishvara is the one whom you are praying to, and he himself has written these philosophies. So is it not a way of indirectly pressurizing people to accept your philosophy? That is an Advaita ashrama. See how they have been open in their self-criticism. That they are not trying to pressurize people into believing. Neither is Acharya trying to do that, he says. That these are outpourings of a full heart through a mind which is not analyzing anything. It is just full of Ananda. That Ananda Lahari is just coming out and manifesting as the words of the Acharya. There is no intention. The mens rea is not there. Usually from this side we say, see the intent behind the act so that merit or punishment can be awarded. But to these, there is no mens, there is no mind, there is no intent. It is coming from the pure fullness of the heart, outpouring through the mind, and therefore there is no intention to brainwash, is what they say. That it is only to open up both the margas. And you will find in the Falastuti that this can be chanted, this can be done parayanam of, this can be meditated on, this can be discussed, this can be taken for Atma Vichara. So this verse lends itself to a whole range of sadhanas. It's only for that purpose that Suti and Stuti and the philosophical abstruseness have been brought together here. But as a combination, we find that the whole area of philosophy is discussed threadbare by many commentators, and it becomes very obtuse also. We find it difficult to decipher the grammar and the logic that they use in Manasolasa commentary. That's why it makes a lot of sense to just rely on Bhagavan's translation and commentary, because we will directly go for the the meaning and the sadhana that way. Coming back to the legend as described by Bhagavan, I'll not be reading from the letter 89, but you can all read from that. I'll try to just relate that event and the practicality of that today, that how it is not merely a story. Whenever there is a story or a nataka that is that is to be portrayed or that you are listening to, there used to be this great nataka director who produced Shivaji Ganeshan, Nagesh, Bhalaya, M.R. Radha, and all those people have come out of his production. I forget his name. It doesn't matter really. It appears he would ask each of the characters to read the dialogues of all the characters. That each of the characters, whatever role you are playing, you may be playing the doorman, having probably one dialogue of praise to the Raja. But you have to go through all the dialogues of all the characters to be participating there. That means when we are listening to the story, literally we will have to participate as though we are playing the role of the various characters in the story. And that is the very purpose of reading talks with Ramana Maharshi, listening to Bhagavan Satcharita, that you literally identify with the parts there. Then finally we understand that those all the parts are we only. That when we bring that story to the mind, whatever the characters in the story, whatever dialogue and implications are all made of us, made of our chitta. But then that is the road which we are going to travel apparently. So without much further, we can go into the legend itself as narrated by Bhagavan in detail in that letter. Bhagavan says that Brahma had 4 Manasaputras, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, the Sanakadis. Then one of the devotees asks Bhagavan, in the Vaishnava tradition, the Sanakadis are said to be eternally 5 years old. How is it that in this tradition, in this legend, it is said that they are old people? Because it is described that Dakshinamurthy is a young one and all the disciples are very old in age. And Bhagavan says that all the great jnanis, they are always 5 years old. They are always innocent. So therefore, only their body is aging. One is telling the story according to the body, another is telling according to the mind, says Bhagavan. So they are still referring to the same 4 people is what Bhagavan is saying. So they are called as Manasa Putras. And how do we play the role as Manasa Putras of Brahma? That means by characterizing, the first statement is that Brahma had 4 Manasa Putras, the Sanakadis. That means it is better to identify with the children, isn't it? In the beginning, what does he mean by Manasa Putras? That we have to shift our perception from the physicality to the mind. That from the physical area domination, we'll have to understand that the whole physical area is dependent for its existence on the Sukshma. Without the Sukshma, the Stula does not exist. Therefore, we should become Manasa Putras. What does that imply, being Manasa Putras? It is that what Grandaf comes and asks Bhagwan, we find that Grandaf has a great spiritual experience of opening up to the light behind all consciousness, and he is full of love, but in that love there is a remembrance of his mother. And he asks Bhagwan, now how am I going to help my mother to come to this experience? And Bhagavan tells him, only if you consider yourself to be a physical body, then another physical body is considered as your mother, and we can extend it. Yet another physical body is considered as your father. Whereas, if you consider yourself to be the I thought, if you consider yourself to be the Jiva, then both the mother and father put together. Bhagavan, of course, says Chinmayi because the reference was in mother, that the self of all becomes the Chinmayi. And she is not present sometime and absent sometime. She is not that mother who is no more there. She is the ever present mother, and forgetting her is the root mistake we are making. So, to join her ever present nature, living your Jiva Bhava is the best help you can do to yourself and to the one whom you call as your mother, he says, Bhagavan says. That means we have to shift from the bodily perception to the subtle, to the mind, where we can understand that we are the Jiva and the Chinmayi is ever present. The source of the I thought is ever present. Our parents are present as thoughts in us, and their source is also the same I. But then we go into that later. Now, can we rest as mental entities? What happens when we go into the physical area? I was walking down yesterday morning here in Seattle, and when I was looking at the houses here, the houses predominantly are made of wood here because of the huge forest areas that are here. The lumbering that must have gone on has produced so much wood that the house constructions are not of floors. If it were to be of many floors, they would need concrete. But here it is, most of the houses are restricted to 2 or 3, and therefore they can manage it with wood. So one thought that can come is, how much wood is being used for all these houses we think of? And I constantly keep listening to the fire engines going in the streets here many times in a day. And we always tell the children at home, see, that is how the fire engine sounds. But the thought connected that, see, because of the housings being, the floors, the ground, everything being made of wood, the fire chances are so much elevated. And how much can be saved in terms of environment and in terms of loss of life uh, if they shift to concrete? One thought. No, that means in the physical area, if you get one thought, then you are engrossed in that area. And I can spend a lifetime in now uh, going into that area, that how to make this shift where so many million tons of wood is being used every day, and the oxygen, from where the oxygen comes? Only from the trees. And those that oxygen travels at 150 kilometers per hour, says Tom Chi, in the atmosphere, and it is spread all over the world. So it is not that tree cutting somewhere is it limits the problem to that area. So when I think of the physical, what happens? The whole universe comes about, and one thought about how the houses are made out of wood becomes a whole universe for me. And it is such a place that one of the presidential candidates here, 5-6 elections ago, he decides not to contest for presidential elections but work for global warming. So that can be a whole avocation. The whole lifetime or lifetimes can be spent in that one thought. Even in a simple way, if you call home and ask, how is mommy? That one thought can lead to about 500, 600 thoughts as to how we will spend in the physical area in the next 10 years. One thought, just asking about how is the physical form of one of your relatives, can go into a whole area of thought where both of us can be aware that, oh, we are getting into the sensory world area. As we are in Bhagavan Satsang, we can realize that we have to shift to Manasa Putras, that we have to shift from sensory beings to Manasa Putras of Brahma. Brahma being the Srishtikarta. Now, can we rest as Manasa Putras? So the physical area is like that. How do we deal with that? with whatever intelligence you have, when physicality is there, that intelligence deals with the physicality. Of course, being Bhagavan's devotees, we know that the Ishvara Shakti is behind us all the time. So the physical needs, I had some breakfast before coming for the talk. It was very easy. 10-minute gap was there between one satsang and the other. Could just go heat up the bread, put something in between, have that. I know the physical body needs that energy to interact for another 45 minutes, fully energized. Now, that Ishvara is behind me to keep the intelligence going, and I need not pre-think it or worry about it later. So, when that activity is required, Ishvara is there behind, it will get taken care of. So, predominantly, let us shift to the Sukshma Sharira. And in Sukshma Sharira, they, being Manasa Putras, can we now be Manasa Putras itself? In Manasa Putra also, Brahma can ask us to be Srishtikartas. That is what Bhagavan says. Brahma asked of these 4 Manasa Putras. They are mental creations, as we all are. At one level, we are physical creations of Brahma. Bhagavan says, don't identify with that. First, treat all this as a dream. It's a strong dream. Where it is happening in the Sukshma Sharira. So come to the mental plane. Now in mental plane also, we can be asked to be playing the creative role. And that is what Brahma asks of the 4 children. That you do the creation. Then they ask, what are you going to do? He says, I am going to seek Upashanti. I am going to seek peace of mind from all this creation. And they are Brahma's Manasaputras. No? So they are already very clear in their consciousness. So they say, if you are going to seek that, why we should be put into creative thinking? The creative thinking area and the thought area is a whole aranya again. Like in the last few weeks of interactions with my old batchmates from the bank, from the family here, one of the primary undercurrents that was coming up was none of our thoughts are the individual's thoughts. That what the individual is putting as his thought in the WhatsApp group, either by the women, as a woman, what she thinks, or as a Hindu or a particular member of particular group, what we feel we think, or as a society, as a citizen of a country, what we think. We feel it is all independent thought. But then it is so clear, and there are people who have worked on this. There is a great thinker called as Noam Chomsky here in the US, who says that most of the thoughts of all the citizens is done by manufacturing consent. That he says that the primary industrial groups and all, they have ownership of media. And how do we get to think? We get our information from the mainstream media. And he says, by controlling the mainstream media, the thoughts of the citizens are all determined by these major corporates who are behind the government. Now, he is so concerned about that. Chomsky is so concerned about that the whole thinking that we have is all preconditioned. Let it be of medicine, let it be of society, let it be of anything. We think we are independently thinking. But he finds that it is not so. And his whole life's work, this was written, manufacturing consent was written 30 years ago. If it had been wrong, then he should have been given some prime space in the print media, the mainstream media. But absolutely not. You find that he is sidelined, no presence in mainstream media, showing that in the analysis in mind, he is correct. That most of the thinking in our day-to-day life is determined by some other thing behind us. And when I was discussing with my daughter how she thinks of the life today, that as a woman, what she thinks of career, what she thinks of education, what she thinks of the marriage relationship, and family life, it is so different from what my mother used to think. That is, her grandmother used to think. But the whole stream of women consciousness has been undergoing change. That it is not only manufacturing content at this level, at governmental level, at more fundamental level, the whole women movement has been undergoing a change. And in the time of my better half, they had all come to careers. The way I was thinking as a male was that where is the need for her to work? But by the time my daughter came, her husband was already open to the fact and was ready for the fact that he should have a wife who is only working. That means the whole individual thought as man and woman is now under the purvey of the flow of consciousness, which is far more substrating. But Bhagavan clears this mental area by saying that the Ishvara is there, the current of Ishvara is there, which is underlying this flow of various currents. Currents as your society, currents as women, man, and women, man are not the only clear identities today. There is a biological spectrum of existence, each claiming their own right. So, therefore, the flows are also getting more complicated, and our own thoughts are determined by the interaction with these flows. Bhagavan clarifies that by saying there is only one current, the Ishvara Shakti, that is behind all this mind, and the state where the Manasa Putras are there are reflected by the creative thinkers. When you listen to uh, the great comedians, the great scientists, they clearly understand that they have to go to the deep sleep state to get new ideas. If you listen to John Cleese, if you listen to Tom Chi, if you listen to uh, Carl Sagan, or even Chomsky, they all clearly understand that human beings, to get creative ideas, they have to go to a space where they do not know. The I do not know, they have to deliberately go. But how they are going? They are going with an idea that they should get a creative idea. Let's say a comedian is writing a piece. John Cleese says that no university teaches this, but he learned on his own that when he is working on a comedy piece in the evening, it's all cluttered. So he goes to sleep with that thought, with the unresolved comedy piece. In the early morning, he is able to write whatever the piece is without any clutter. He says the creativity comes from deep sleep. That creativity comes from going into deep sleep like introspection. But such state, is it what is recommended as the direct experience? No, that is where we become Manasa Putras as instruments of creation. Bhagavan doesn't say whether the physical activity or mental creation should go on or should not go on, because that clarity should be brought in here. The clarity can be brought in here by taking the example of Arjuna. When Arjuna goes to the war and sees that he has to fight the Dharma war against his own relatives, against his own guru, he has to wage the war on behalf of Dharma. So he gets into confusion. That he decides, he says something very noble, that it is better to be a sannyasi and go to the forest, be a bhikshu, rather than do this Dharma. Then Sri Krishna clarifies for us, and Bhagavan clarifies through the talks, that by saying I will not do, also you are becoming involved with the physical or the mental areas. By saying that hereafter I will not do, or hereafter I will not think, at that very point itself you become a person involved in that area. Therefore, what to do? That one should not have any kind of worry or any kind of attachment, aversion to the area of the physicality of things. It will happen. When it has to happen, it will happen. The spoken satsang will be there. The Parayanam satsang will be there. The having food, having shelter will be there. The talk about that will be there. But that is not the area that should be naturally taken as a residence. Should we take residence in the mind? From Chomsky's determination, he says we should take that role because he gives the ultimate threat to the intellectual. He says that more than a Hitler who comes once in a way in the physical area, kills some physical entities and goes away. He says the intellectual who sees the disparities, who sees the iniquities and doesn't act, he is far worse than Hitler, he says, because the error he makes is in the mental area. Now, with this challenge that the intellectual has to do something about the iniquities in the physical and iniquities in the mental area, how are we to take the Atma Vicharam? We should take that the intellectual seeing this decides based on the Acharyas and Bhagavan's Upadesham and one's own experience that the best thing to do in this is not to deliberately involve in the physical area or deliberately involve in the mental transformation that society is going like this. They are manufacturing consent. Then some people are going into creative thinking. Not worry about all that. Let that part happen automatically. You should not be concerned about whether you had this or that as food, Bhagavan says. Should not be concerned about whether you brought out a thought about how to share a normal experience or a great creative thought about Dakshinamurthy Stotram itself comes through you. It shouldn't matter that a new way of looking at things is coming through you. That's not the purpose. The purpose is not to create a new way of looking at Dakshinamurthy Stotram. It is merely to abide in the self. The other things will incidentally happen. The other things will happen by the Ishvara Agnya, and anyway they are bound to happen. Anyway, the activities in the physical area and the activities in the mental area, anyway they are bound to happen. So where is the point in spending free energy on that? It is all bound, hand, feet and breath. That in that area, the Ishvara Agnya is so commanding that the physical activities and the mental activities are bound to happen. At the right time, somebody will say, Sir, are you ready for the Dakshinamurthy Stotram today? We had planned for today. And you will know the whole setup is there. You will be made to think. And you will say yes. And the satsang will go on. But is that the residence? Is the satsang in the mind area? Is that the residence we have to take? No, says Bhagavan. That the Manasaputras understood that the creativity either as reforming the mental structures, as Chomsky says, or as going to the source of creativity and bringing new thought into legislation, new thought into art, new thought into various areas, like the philosophers think. That Socrates says that we can bring new ideas into government by going into that area. But that is not the purpose for which we are to be here, not to merely bring creative thoughts into creation. That will happen anyway. That is bound to happen. So one is not to comment on those areas, but one has to go to the source of Upashantam. Source of Upashantam being Maunam. That they seek. And they decide that they are not going to be part of the physical creation or the mental restructuring or the mental creativity. They want complete peace of mind. Whatever you are seeking, O Father, we also want that only. And the Sanakadis go in search of that. And Narada Muni comes. Once you go in search of that, the right people start appearing. Because Ishvara's main goal is what he is. What Ishvara is this Upashantam. So that is the primary presence in the whole creation. So when somebody seeks Upashantam, automatically all the supports are there. you will find that no special effort is, the very seeking brings in everything else. And Narada comes and he says, let us go to Brahman in the Satyalokam. Bhagavan says, they all troop to Satyalokam to seek the truth about Upashantam. Not creativity in the physical area, not resolving the mental issues or creativity in mental area, but going for peace of mind. They go to the Brahmaloka, the Satyaloka, says Bhagavan. And in that Satyaloka, there Brahma is listening to the music of Saraswati. Saraswati is singing so beautifully, Brahma is listening. And these people feel that when these two elements of male and female are in mutual enjoyment of each other through music, how can such a one who is in such a relationship, how can he have Brahma Jnana? They go to Vishnu Loka and Narada asks them to stay outside. He is known in the Vishnu Loka, and in Vaikunta he goes to the innermost place where he sees Lakshmi doing the massage of the legs of Vishnu, and he comes back with a crestfallen face and reports to the Sanakadis that at least there the wife was separate and he was listening to the music. Here he is getting the physical service itself of leg being massaged from Lakshmi. There is no hope here. So they go to Kailasha, going through Himachala, all the way in the expectation that Shiva is going to relieve them. There the Shiva Nartana, the Ardhanarishwara dance is going on, and they decide that how can there, at least in one place there was a gap and music was being listened. Next there was Sparsha. Here he has completely allowed intermingling. Half of the body is Parvati and they are doing dance together. How can we expect? And Bhagavan says one beautiful thing. He says, then Shiva thinks. See, these are the places where we are told by Bhagavan as to what the Guru thinks. The Guru, the knowledge inside Shiva, thinks, what foolishness, that how can the Mummurtis be bereft of jnana? And how can these people assume that when somebody is along with others, that they will not have jnana? And out of compassion for the Sanakadis, he takes a form which they feel will have jnana. Bhagavan says, Shiva, out of compassion, for whether it is compassion for Sanakadis or compassion for us, we don't know. But then it is compassion that you can have jnana either through the sannyasa marga, or jnana cannot be denied to the ones who are householders. Both are being highlighted for us, that neither should stop striving for jnana. Jnana is common property. Jnana is the adhara for everything. The Atma Swarupa is the adhara for everything. Should not be cluttered by your the physiological status or the duties you are doing in the mind, which has been informed previously, isn't it? That the Manasaputras are already people who are not worried about their physicality. So why should they differentiate between householders and the sannyasi? But that is still there in their thought, that somebody who is surrounded by the family cannot have jnana is a thought they have. And therefore, out of compassion for the four of them, Bhagavan says that Shiva takes the form of the Yuva, the, the Brahmachari, and he sits under the tree, the Alamaram, in the Manasarovar lake. In the Manasarovar lake, in the north side, facing south, Bhagavan says, Dakshinamurthy is seated, and these four people are so happy to see that such a jnani, by their very darshan, they understand. And Bhagavan says to Muruganar in elsewhere, I don't remember from where I read this, that for 1 year they keep asking questions from Dakshinamurthy Swami, that for 1 year exchanges are keeping on going, that though they have decided not to be creative in the area of mind, though they have decided not to get entangled in the Manasa area, still they are having doubts. And Bhagavan says, 1 year they go on asking questions of Dakshinamurti Swami and he is answering. Then at some point, the Guru decides, enough is enough. They are mature now. Let me go into Maunam. And that power of Maunam, they are able to sense, and their egos are stilled. And that Maunam is everywhere. And the four are abiding in the self, and they have Atma Jnana, they have Brahma Jnana, Mauna Vyakya, Prakatita Parabrahma Tattva. The Parabrahma Tattvam is shared in Maunam itself. The Maunam of the Guru pulls all the four into that self. It just draws them into the self. They are ready to be pulled. Kanakammal says once Bhagavan looks her into the eyes and she just simply goes into the self. But then she was ready not to look arrogantly through the eyes. The devotion, the inwardness, the readiness to be pushed in was already there in Kanakamat. When she describes that event, Bhagavan just pushes her in through the Nayana Diksha. Here, even that Nayana Diksha is not required. Just the Guru's silence is so powerful that it pulls the four of them into that same silence, which is the Atma Tattvam, which is the Brahma Tattvam. And once that experience is there, then they learn, they are called back again and again to the Atma Anubhava. And the stories are all finished. The one Anubhava that the Guru gives, then the Abhyasi has to and will return to that Anubhava again and again, till abidance becomes natural. The Mauna becomes natural. And that is the legend of Dakshinamurthy Stotram. But as that Maunam, which Acharya Shankara also used to teach to his disciples, was not sensible to many of the serious devotees also, he has written this as a verse, which can be available for us to do Parayana, to have, that is, sensory contact, to have Manana, to have Dhyana, and to have Vicharana, till that Mauna consumes us. So out of compassion for us all, what happened in that Maunam is now written in the form of Sri Dakshinamurthy Stotram. The Stuti. One can do Stuti, one can do Parayanam, one can do meditation, one can do Atma Vicharam, and come to the Mauna Tattvam, which becomes clear. Bhagavan says in talks that how are you called as Dakshinamurti Swarupam? Somebody asks him. You came out of Sundaram and Alagu, both meaning the same, one in Sanskrit and another in Tamil, both meaning Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Sundaram cannot be apart from Satyam and Shivam, isn't it? Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram are all together in the Sat Vastu itself. Now, how can you claim to be, or Bhagavan says, he doesn't claim for himself. He says all the Mauna Gurus, they come out of the same Mauna. They have their source not in the biological entities, not the thought entities, but from the Purna Mauna. They alone can claim to be the descendants of Dakshinamurti. Vadayadi Vadai. Dakshinamurti, he says, has left these arumbus, these shoots. These shoots are Bhagavan is Dakshinamurti Swarupa because he's abiding in the self. His source is not the biological entity. His source is not some book. His source is from the Mauna itself. That is how he is Dakshinamurti Swarupam. And he himself has translated Dakshinamurthy Stotram for us in Tamil. And he is present as the Mauna Swarupa, the Atma Swarupa inside us. So through practice of Atma Vicharam, through meditation on Dakshinamurti Stotram, through Parayanam, Venkateshji and Sumanji, they would insist that we do the Parayanam of all the 11, including the initial verse every day, then start with the verse reading. That makes a lot of sense. That wherever, in whichever area we can stay connected with the Sadvastu, we have to stay connected. When so far as we eat food, we have to find connection in the physical area. Then only we can turn mentally. So far as we have other thoughts, we should have thought of Dakshinamurti Stotram. Then only we can come to meditation of what is this self-enquiry Bhagavan is teaching us. And practice the holding of the eye, which takes us to the same source as Sri Dakshinamurti Swamigal, as Acharya Shankara, and Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Because these gift givers are not ordinary gift givers. They don't merely give this vastu or that vastu. They come for birthday and give a gift of dress or absolutely not. They give sarvam, sarvatma tattvam. That take everything. Whatever there is in the Atma Swarupa. You will not have any discontent. Come into Maunam. Have everything. Enjoy the bliss that is Akandananda. Have that knowledge which has no blemish. And be that which alone is. That is the Upadesham given by the Dakshinamurti Swarupam. That is given by Dakshinamurti Swarupam, which appeared as Acharya Shankara and which appeared as Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, and which is in each one of us as the Atma Swarupa, where we are headed for the next few minutes till 8 o'clock, when we will listen to Akka. Ujjwalji, you can set the time for us. We'll sit in Atma Ucharam for the next few minutes, and at 8 o'clock, we'll listen to Sharadaka.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana. Shining is the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have commenced on this great new yajna. Every moment is new, and yet there are some moments which are very special, and but for Bhagavan's grace, we could not have started off on the exploration of the Dakshinamurthy Stotram. Just as he has allowed us earlier to this, to delve into Ulladu Narpadu, Anubandham and Annabodham, now he is allowing us to meditate on and delve into the Dakshinamurthy Stotram. Dakshinamurthy, the concept itself being pure silence. So he is allowing us to delve through manana into pure silence, and which is what Nandakumar said is being allowed by Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada by the very composition of the Dakshinamurthy Stotram. It is a concession to us by putting into words in the best possible manner, directly from the experience of the silence, those words. We have every word of Bhagavan coming out directly from that silence, the bliss of that silence, as Nandakumar said at the beginning, as commented upon in Bandai, the Swamis of Ramakrishna Math. He said that it is springing directly from the self. These words are springing directly from the self. So they are the closest we can come to silence in terms of words. And how it is a concession to us, it is out of pure grace. It is out of pure grace first in the legend that Shiva took the form of Dakshinamurti. That itself was a concession, as we find from the legend, because the grace that is all pervasive, all inclusive. The intellect divides that into this is correct and this is wrong, this is right and this is wrong, this is the way it should be and this is the way it should not be. In fact, there's a sweet story in Bhagavan's life where we find that Bhagavan is constructing a mud wall in Virupaksha cave when a new group of devotees come for darshan of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Bhagavan is busy constructing the mud wall. He probably has his towel tied on his head like a working mason. And in those days, it was not uncommon for workers to be clad in a loincloth. So here is a loincloth clad person working away at a mud wall with his body splattered with mud. And the group of devotees have come to see him. They ask him, where is Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi? He says, somewhere on the hill. When will he come? I don't know. And then they leave, disappointed, not having darshan of Bhagavan, because in their mind, they had an image of how Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi should look. And as they were coming down, but the compassion is always there. As they were coming down, they met Echamal, who was taking food up to Bhagavan. And she asked them, why are you looking sad? And they said, oh, we could not have darshan of Bhagavan and we have to leave today or whenever, maybe he will not come today. Then she said, no, I think he will come now. because I am taking food for him, come with me. In the meantime, Bhagavan had washed himself, washed his body, smeared sacred ash on his forehead, and sat down on the platform in front of Virupaksha cave. And all these people came and prostrated and had his darshan and basked in the darshan and left. After which Echamal asked him, Bhagavan, why didn't you tell them that you are Bhagavan? He said, do you want me, Echamal, do you want me to put a label on my head? This is Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. So that is how it is. We want even Atmanubhava, we have a particular concept about the Atmanubhava. If the Atma doesn't reveal itself to us in that manner, we will refuse to recognize it. That is the way of the intellect. But then there is the grace, which allows it to manifest in a manner that is palpable to us. I had a personal experience with Vishwanatha Swami. I was then a girl of 17, 18. When I was between 17 and 19, I had deeper interactions with Vishwanatha Swami about the Atma Sadhana, though we were fortunate to have interactions with him even earlier, when he came on Girivalam with us and other factors, other ways in which he would bless us. But this was a deep interaction, specifically on self-enquiry, when he had sweetly said, I am available to you as a friend. Whenever you want, you can ask me any doubts which you have. And off and on, I would send him letters, queries about self-enquiry and worries about my own sadhana. And whenever we went, sometimes he would reply, but whenever we went to Ramanashramam, which was 2-3 times in a year, Bhagwan had allowed us to go even then or even more frequently, because those were the beginnings of the birth centenary of Bhagwan. The celebrations were starting and he had allowed us to take an active part. So we would go. And he would often say that, I will give you the reply in person. So there was this time when I had written a letter with some queries, and he told me to come to his room in the afternoon. And there were some people and they were meditating, and then they left. And then he said, see, Sharda, these people also came with some doubts. And we all meditated, and their doubts were solved. So what I suggest is, let us sit together and meditate. Now, for whatever reason, in my mind came the thought, yes, Swami, I have sat down to meditate, but my mind says to me, those people were seniors, they must have been able to meditate, their minds would have gone to silence, but my problem is my mind is not going to silence. And Swami says, now we will meditate, and what if I don't find the answer? All these problems were tormenting me. But I sat down, I do not know how silent I was. And after I finished that session, after some time, he said, okay. And he said, okay, now I will answer your questions. And he actually gave me some answers as well. And having given the answers, he says, now go to the old hall and meditate again. Okay, so the point is that such is their compassion. Such is the compassion that the limitations of each of the seekers is very well known to the Sadguru. And the Sadguru comes down to the level of each of the seekers. The reason why Sadhu Om Swami says that the hill of knowledge, that Arunachala, which up till today is just radiating jnana. That is what Kunju Swami told me in another occasion. He said, there are radiations of jnana all around Arunachala. Let somebody come do anything they feel like in the presence of Arunachala. You people say the physical diseases are infectious, contagious. How much more powerful can be the contagion of jnana? That is there. The Arunachala is spreading this jnana. Then why did that hill, which is able to spread that jnana, the contagion of jnana, decide to take a human form? Ask Sadhu Om Swami. He says, Jnanamalayum nadandu varave kanden. Arunachala Shiva, Jnanamalayum nadandu varave kanden. For what purpose? He says, அகில உலகும் சுகம் அடையவே அறிவை அறியும் வழியை பெறவே பகிர்முக இருள் பாசமறவே பகவன் ரமண குரு வடிவினில் ஞானமலையும் நடந்து வரவே கண்டேன். And that Jnanamalai came in human form. And first to show us in the early years in Patalingam and elsewhere that as still as the hill could be this human form as well, as rock-like like the hill could be the human form as well. Even in the human birth, we could be in that absolute, even physical stillness. And then out of compassion, he started speaking. He started engaging in the various human activities to reveal to us that none of this disturbs the natural state of jnana. But out of compassion, he did all this. So also the Dakshinamurthy Stotram has come to us. The form of Dakshinamurthy came to us initially out of compassion, and it is said even in the legend that even the form of Dakshinamurthy, the mind questioned. The Sanakas, the purest of Sanakas, questioned, had doubts and raised questions, and then could go into the silence, be drawn into the silence. So we can understand that compassion has come to us to listen to the exposition, allow the mind to move within the boundaries of the exposition instead of running helter-skelter everywhere. He has given us some boundaries. You see, the purpose of japa, the purpose of parayana, the purpose of these meditation, manana on these verses is that it allows the mind to get narrowed down and focused into more single unifocused tracks instead of getting scattered everywhere. And then having made us unifocused in this thought to bring to us the glory of the self, the glory of silence. And of course Bhagavan is Dakshinamurti. Vishwanatha Swami has narrated one more incident of Bhagavan on one Shivaratri night, when in the beginning of the night one of the devotees requested him, please explain the Dakshinamurthy Stotram to us. And Bhagavan said, surely. And nobody knew how the night passed. It was morning, there was total silence throughout the night. And the devotee said, Bhagavan, you said you will explain the sloka. Everyone had been absorbed. They never knew that the night had passed. They were absorbed in that silence. So Bhagavan smiled and said, yes, that is what has happened. That is what was done. This shloka was explained through Anubhava. So we can only say, like Marvana says, Enna Kaimaratani, what can we give in recompense to the ever overflowing grace of Bhagavan?
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana to all. If there is any doubt, you can put in the group, then probably we can include it when Akka or we speak in the next week. So those who are participating, if you are having any doubt or any suggestion to make, you can come to that Atma Bodha group, which will be retitled by Revati as usual. So you can put the doubts or contribution in that group. Namo Ramana.